guys, welcome back to our channel. Today we are teaching you how to make a basic cabled beanie. This is the Adrina hat by Filatura Di Crosa. It is part of the Fall Winter 1920 collection. This is going to be a complete video tutorial. However, if you do like written patterns to follow along, you can find a link down below in the description to download this pattern for free this month only. If you're watching this in the future, sorry to say, but this pattern is available for purchase through Ravelry or the Filatura Di Crosa website. So to get started on this tutorial, you need a couple things. First of all is your yarn, of course. Today we are using Samarcanda, which is a kid mohair blend fancy yarn. This is color number 7 for anyone who is interested. You need, of course, your needles. Today we are using round needles, but since this is knit in the flat, you can also use straight needles. You're going to need a cable needle, or in this case, because I actually don't have a cable needle, I'm going to use some interchangeable needles. This one's in a size 8. The needles we're actually going to be working with are a size 9 or 5.5 millimeters. And lastly, you're going to need a pair of scissors and a tapestry needle. Okay, let's get started. So to get started, all you are going to do is cast on 69 stitches. If you don't know how to cast on already, I do have a video already up on our channel on how to cast on, how to do a very beginner cast on. Today I'm actually going to use the long tail method just because I think it looks a little bit cleaner for this pattern. However, use whatever cast on you prefer and feel most comfortable with. So once you have cast on your 69 stitches, if you use the long tail method, you're going to have some yarn left over on this side. I always just kind of like to roll it up and tie it in a little bit of a knot so it's not in my way. Some people like to leave it hanging, really a matter of personal preference here. So for the first 8 rows, we are going to work a 1x1 rib. So for those of you who have been knitting for a while, you already know what we're going to be doing. But for those of you who are new, 1x1 ribbing is just a combination of knit and purl stitches. So this is a K1P1 rib, so just go ahead and work that all the way across the first row. Knit the first stitch, bring the yarn to the front, purl the second. For any of you guys who might be unfamiliar with knitting and purling, we do have some beginner's basics that you might want to check out before you actually try and knit this hat. I go over the basics of how to knit, how to purl, and how to cast on, just so you have some foundational skills and you're ready to work as soon as you come back to this video. Okay, so we have finished the very first row. The same with every other K1P1 rib. We're going to work exactly as the stitches appear on the back. So for some of you who might not know how to tell the difference between a knit stitch and a purl stitch, the purl stitches have these little bumps that go left to right across the front of them, whereas a knit stitch kind of looks like it just goes up and down. So as you can see, because I ended this side on a K stitch, you know this one's a purl, and you can see the little bump right there. So the back side is just going to be a purl one, the knit one, ribbing repeat. Go ahead and continue this for 8 rows, and then I will see you back for the next step. Okay. Once you have knit the first 8 rows of 1x1 rib, it should look a little something like this. If you stretch it apart, you can kind of see some of the stitches go back and some of the stitches come forward. That's how you know you did it correctly. So now going forward, we are going to start the cable repeat. So the first thing that you are going to do is purl 8 stitches. So again, those of you who know how to purl, just go ahead and do that. For those of you who don't, always remember that purling, you go from right to the left with the yarn in front, wrap your yarn around, back out and off the needle. Once you have purled the first 8 stitches, then you are going to go ahead and knit the next 8. Okay. So again, that's purl 8, knit 8, and then we're going to purl 7 more. And that is the repeat for this row. So then you're just going to repeat these. So it's going to be purl 8, knit 8, purl 7 over again. Again, you're going to knit 8, purl 7, purl 8, knit 8, and then end on a purl 7. So on the back, we're just going to knit the stitches as they appear. So you're going to start out with knitting 7, purling 8, knitting 15, so on and so forth across the row. So after you've knit the second row, you can really start to see the stitches pop out at you where you can follow along. You don't really have to count at that point anymore. You can see clearly where the knit stitches start and where the purl stitches are. So we're going to go ahead and knit 6 more rows to match this, and then we will do our very first cable. Okay, so once you've knit rows 1 through 8 of the cable pattern, you are going to knit your first cable row where the stitches actually cross. Essentially, you're just taking some stitches and crossing them either over the front or the back of the next stitches to create a twist in the fabric. So of course we're gonna start with our first 8 purl stitches as we have been working. And then where you have your knit stitches is where we're actually going to cross our stitches. So this pattern calls for a C8F, which means cross 8 in the front. So in order to do this, typically you'd take a cable needle. I'm actually just going to take a size 8 of my circular needles, just because it's what I have on hand. And I'm going to slip the first 4 stitches onto this needle. So because it says CF8, that means I'm going to hold these stitches in the front and knit these ones from the back. So you just knit off of the green needles as normal. So you knit the rest of the 4 stitches, and then from here, if you're working with a cable needle or a circular needle, you can just knit them straight off of this. But if you only have a second set of straight needles where it has a little bobbin on the end, you can just pop them back over to your working needle. Like this, and knit them as you normally would. So it might feel a little bit tight and a little bit awkward the first time you do it, but that's just because you're pulling 4 stitches out of place to where they would normally be, so it gets a little bit tighter and can sometimes be a little bit finicky. So that is what you should see once you're finished. You can already see the 2 crossing over and forming that cable pattern. So you're just going to knit all of the purl rows as they appear, and then you're going to cross 8 front whenever you see knit stitches. So that's going to be take the first 4 stitches off the needle, knit 4, and then knit the other 4 that you slipped onto the cable needle. And the reason we do purl stitches next to the cables is because it makes the stitches stand out a lot more. When you see a cable next to knit stitches, it kind of just doesn't really show off because purl stitches go backwards, whereas knit stitches go forward. So you can see the difference here, where these are the purl stitches and these are the knit stitches. They're in the front of the work and the purl stitches are in the back. So when you do purl stitches next to cables, it makes the cable come forward and the purl stitches go back. So again, we're at the knit stitches, so I'm going to slip 4 stitches onto my second needle, or third needle should I say. Then I'm going to hold them in the front of my work and knit the 4 stitches off the green needle as I normally would. Then I'm actually just going to knit these ones off of the red needle because it's easier. You could also use DP ends if you don't have a cable needle. DP ends are double pointed needles. They just kind of look exactly like this, except for instead of the silver part, it'll look exactly mirrored to this side. Okay, so now that we're coming up on our last cable, I'm going to show you guys one more time how to cross over these stitches. So again, you just slip these first 4 stitches without working them. You're literally just moving them from one needle to the next onto your cable needle, round needle, whatever needle you're using to hold those stitches. And then you're going to work the next 4 knit stitches as you normally would. And again, then you work these 4 stitches you slipped off. So you see that cable forming already. And then you're just going to finish out the row by purling the rest of the stitches. Okay, so for the last row of the cable repeat, you're just going to knit across the same way we have been. So you're going to knit where you see the knit stitches and purl where you see the purl stitches. The purl stitches might look a little bit funny this time, but that's just because we cabled. We crossed over all the stitches from the last row. So just knit them as they appear on the needle and you should be good. Okay, so now you guys have knit 10 rows of the cable pattern. So this is what you should be looking at. You'll have 3 cables starting to form with purl stitches all in between. You're going to continue knitting the exact same way we just did that for 16 more rows. So it's going to bring you to a total of 26 rows in the cable repeat. Again, just make sure every 9 rows you're going to cross the stitches to continue that cable pattern. Everything else you're just going to be knitting as the stitches appear. Hi guys, so we have just gone ahead and knit our 16 rows off camera. I hope you guys didn't have any trouble with that. So as you can see, there are 2 cable crossovers here. The way you can tell that is because you'll see just 2 parts are going up and over the stitches to the left. So if you see this kind of little squiggle and this one to match it, that means there's a crossover here and a crossover here. Okay guys, so we're on our first decreased row now of the hat. So the way we're going to start to shape the crown, which is where the hat starts to pull in when you're wearing it, is by purling a couple of these stitches together. So all of this is going to be done on the right side, which is the cable side of the hat. So the first thing we're going to do is purl this first stitch. Next, we're going to purl 2 together. So that means I'm going to put my needle in not only through the next stitch, but also this one together. Like that. And you just wrap your yarn around and purl like normal, except just grab 2 stitches this time instead of 1. And then you just pop both of them off the stitch at 2 times. So this is one single decrease. You can see I made 2 stitches, but there's only 1 up here, aside from that first one that we purled. Next, we're just gonna purl 3, as we normally would. And then we're gonna purl 2 together again. So these 2 stitches right here are going to become 1. So right now you should have 6 stitches on your needle. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If you guys remember, we were purling 8 across in the beginning of the row, but now we're at 6. So next up, we're just going to knit across the cable pattern again. So because we knit 16 stitches from the 10 that I had originally showed you, that means we're on row 7 of the cable repeat. So keep in mind, at row 9 is when we cross the stitches. Row 7, we're just knitting across like normal. Just to let you guys know, if you guys are a little bit confused while following along with this video, the Adrina hat written pattern, for those of you who work better from a written pattern rather than a video tutorial, is free this month, December 2019. I'll link it down below where you can go to get the pattern for free. And if you're watching this in the future, sorry, but this pattern still is available for purchase. Though you should have all the tools you need to knit this pattern through this video tutorial. So next we're on the purl stitches again. So we are going to purl 1. Make sure your yarn's in the front. And we're gonna purl 2 together. Then purl 2, then purl 2 together, purl 2, purl 2 together, purl 2, then purl 2 together. Okay? So you should be with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 stitches after the cable stitches. So again, we went from 15 down to 11. Again, for the cable, you're just going to knit across. Okay, so we're going to repeat what we just did right here by bringing the 15 stitches down to 11. So again, we're going to purl 1, purl 2 together, purl 2, purl 2 together, purl 2, purl 2 together, purl 2, and purl 2 together. Knit the next 8 stitches for the cable rows. So for these last 7 stitches, what we're going to do is purl 2 together, purl 2, purl 2 together, and then purl that last stitch. So you should have a total of 57 stitches left on your needle. So if you want to make sure you did all of those decreases correctly, go ahead and count them. And then if you didn't, rewind back and make sure you got everything correctly. So again, between all of these stitches, you should have 11, 11. You should now have 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You should have 6, 8, 11, 8, 11, 8, and 5. So then you're just gonna go ahead and knit the stitches as they appear again. So that's gonna be knit, purl, knit, purl, knit, purl, and knit. Okay, so for this next row, we are going to start off with another purl 1. We're going to purl 2 together. Purl 1, purl 2 together. Okay, so the most important thing for this row is that you have to cable the stitches. We're on the 9th row of the cable repeat, so it's time for us to cross over our stitches the same way we've been doing. Just slip 4 stitches off the needle, hold it in the front, and knit the next 4 off. Then knit the next 4 off of your cable needle. Okay, so for the next few stitches, we're going to purl 2 together and then purl 1 3 times. And then we're gonna end on a purl 2 together. So together, I'll do it with you. We're gonna purl 2 together, purl 1, purl 2 together, purl 1, purl 2 together, purl 1, and then we're going to end on a purl 2 together. So we're back at the cable stitches. Again, we're going to slip 4 stitches off. Knit 4. Then knit 4 off of the cable needle. So again, we're gonna work the purl 2 together, purl 1, repeat 3 times, ending on a purl 2 together. So we're gonna purl 2 together, purl 1, purl 2 together, purl 1, purl 2 together, purl 1, and then end on purl 2 together. So this is your last cable again, you guys. Slip 4 stitches off the needle. You should know the drill by now. the last 5 stitches, what we are going to do is purl 2 together twice and then end on a purl 1. Okay, so this is what we're looking at. After that row, you should have 45 stitches remaining. So again, if you feel a little unsure if you did it correctly, count up your stitches, and if you have 45, you are on the right track. So now we should see 3 cable crossovers. So for this back row, again, you're just going to knit the stitches as they appear, starting with your knit stitches, 8 purl stitches, so on and so forth across the row. Okay guys, so we are on our 3rd decrease row. So far, this is just to give you guys a little update. This is what your project should look like. Again, we have 3 cable crossovers and we have 45 stitches left on the needles. So to start out this row, instead of purling the first stitch, we are going to purl 2 together. And purl 2 together again. You're going to knit the 8 stitches for the cable across. And we're going to purl 2 together 3 times and then purl 1. So again, that's purl 2 together, purl 2 together, purl 2 together, and then purl 1. Knit the 8 cable stitches. Again, we're going to purl 2 together 3 times and then purl 1. So it's purl 2 together. Oh, make sure that yarn is in the front when you're purling. Purl 2 together, purl 2 together, purl 2 together, then purl 1. Knit the 8 cable stitches. I feel like you guys should know the drill by now. So we're basically only doing decreases wherever the cables aren't. So on all of those purl stitches across, that's where we're decreasing, just so we can maintain that integrity of the cable all the way up until we're finished. So for these last 3 stitches, we're just going to purl 2 together. And then purl 1. As usual guys, just knit across the back as the stitches appear. So by now, you guys should probably start to see your hat starting to make kind of a triangle shape. It gets a little bit thinner as we decrease the stitches, obviously. It's going to be widest at the bottom point. So to start off this last decrease row, we are going to purl 2 together, Knit across the 8 stitches for the cables. We're gonna purl 2 together, purl 2 together, knit for the 8 cable stitches, purl 2 together, purl 2 together, knit across for the 8 cable stitches, then you're just gonna purl the last 2 stitches together. So now you guys should have 30 stitches left on the needles. So the last row we're actually going to work is just knitting the stitches as they appear on the back side. Okay, so there you guys have it. You guys have finished all of the knitting you need to do to make the Adrina hat. Okay, you guys, so now that you have finished all of the knitting you need to do to make the Adrina hat, or just a simple cable beanie, the next thing you're gonna do is grab your tapestry needle and thread the remaining yarn through. You can cut some of this yarn. Since we didn't have that much yarn left in the bowl, I just threaded the whole thing through so I would have more than enough yarn to seam up my hat. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the yarn still attached and we're going to go to the other side and sew through all of our stitches. While we do that, we're actually going to slip them off the needle just so we make sure we got everything. Maybe I should cut some of this yarn off just because it's very long, but that's okay. So to sew off these stitches, all you're literally going to do is just pop your needle through and slip them onto your tapestry needle. Kind of like how we slip the stitches off onto the cable needle, you're going to do the same thing for this tapestry needle. Okay, so once you secure off all of your stitches, pull tight so that the top of the beanie ends up closed. So then from here on out, what you're going to do is you're just going to sew down the side of the hat by using the Kitchener stitch. So in order to do that, essentially what you're going to do is take the two sides and pick up a stitch on the left side and match it to the same stitch in the same row on the right side. You guys do have to be a little patient with this. Sometimes it can take a little while, but if it's your first time seaming up something, it's better to take a little extra time than to rush through the whole thing and not be satisfied with how it looks after you just spent all of this time knitting your hat. So again, you're just going to grab the leg of this stitch and match it up to the leg of this stitch on the other side. Okay, you guys, so it should look a little something like this. You're just going to be knitting it all the way down. I'll just go ahead and do that off camera, and I'll see you back in a few minutes. Okay guys, so there we have it. We have fully finished seaming up the side of the Adrina hat. For the last step of this tutorial, we are just going to make a pom-pom. So if you have a pom-pom maker, definitely go ahead and use that. I'm just going to show a little tip for anybody at home who maybe doesn't have all of the tools that some of you guys might have out there. So I'm actually just going to take a water bottle. It's pretty thick, but it's not overly thick. I like a big pom-pom, so I don't mind if it's really big because I can always trim it down at the end. So essentially what you're going to do to make a pom-pom is I'm just going to leave a big tail so I have enough room to tie at the end. And I'm just going to wrap around the water bottle. Okay, so I actually just wrapped it around 145 times. The more times you wrap around, the more dense your pom-pom will be. So after you do that, go ahead and pop it off of the water bottle, being sure to grab it in the middle. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna take the rest of your yarn and wrap it around the middle. So it looks like a bow almost. But make sure you leave this tail end sticking out. Don't get it wrapped up in the middle. So I'm gonna wrap it once around my finger so I have somewhere to tie in under. So I'm just gonna go ahead and pull that really, really tight. When I make pom-poms, I like to really, really make sure they're secure, so I wrap it around quite a few times and tie it quite a few times. So once you've secured your pom-pom, leave your tail sticking out. And what you're gonna do is you're just gonna cut across and cut open all of these little loops. So if you see here, they're loops. Be sure not to cut that center piece, otherwise your pom-pom will fall apart. And also, please, please, please don't forget to leave your tail out. Make sure you don't cut that apart because otherwise you won't have anything to tie your pom-pom with. Okay, so once you have cut all of those pieces open, go ahead and shake out your pom-pom. So it's gonna look really weird and misshapen at first. So what you're gonna do from here is just go through and trim down your pom-pom. Make sure you keep shaking it out as you trim, because you don't want some pieces to get stuck together and then you have to trim it even shorter and shorter. So the way I trim it is I kind of just look around the edge, and if I see any weird lumps or bumps, I just trim it to match the rest. Okay, and there you have it, a perfect pom-pom. So you're gonna have a little bit of a mess to clean up. I'm just gonna push all of that over to the side. Please excuse all of the little bits of mohair. So then you're just gonna take your hat and the tail of the pom-pom and sew it right on in to the top of the hat. So pull the tail right through, line up where you want the pom-pom to go in the hat, and then flip it inside out, and then just weave in the ends like you're going to weave in the rest of the ends. And there you have it. That's the Adrina hat. I really hope you guys like this tutorial. Just so you know, we do have a little bit of a surprise for you. For this month only, we are having a surprise giveaway for the Adrina hat. You can win everything you need to make this hat. Instructions will be down in the description below. Like and subscribe and follow all of those directions, and you might win your very own Adrina hat.